I never thought I'd be the guy posting a story like this, but here I am. My name's Steve, I'm 38, and I've been married to my wife Lisa for almost 10 years. We've got a pretty good life, or at least I thought so. We built this life around shared passions, me with my ocean restoration project, which involves deploying these high-tech artificial reefs, and Lisa with her career in marketing. She's always been a bit bitchy, kind of demanding, but I loved her. She was smart, beautiful, and I was under the impression she was faithful. Things started feeling off a few months ago, though. She'd come home later than usual, sometimes smelling like she'd been somewhere with a guy, just faint hints, little things. But I shrugged it off. Maybe it was work or her trying to get ahead. I never really pressed her about it because I didn't want to be that guy. Still, I noticed she started lying about where she was. Say she'd be out with friends, but I'd see her texts that didn't match up. She'd get defensive if I asked questions, brushing me off with her usual bitchy attitude, telling me I was paranoid or insecure. That was her go-to, gaslighting me, acting like I was the crazy one. I let it slide because I wanted to trust her, but deep down I felt something was wrong. Then I started noticing strange things on my computer. Small files I didn't put there, strange bookmarks on the browser, things I'd never seen before. One night I woke up and caught her sneaking around in the living room, late. She froze when she saw me and quickly closed her laptop. Her face was guilty, but she snapped at me saying she was just browsing some weird articles. I didn't buy it. It felt like I was slowly losing my grip on the story I'd told myself about us. And honestly, I was starting to get angry. How could she betray me like this after everything? I mean, we've been through so much. I thought we had a good thing. One day, I decided to do a little digging. I found out she'd been messaging some guy named Mark, an engineer who works with us on our ocean project. Turns out she'd been seeing him behind my back for months. I saw the messages, flirty, suggestive, talking about meeting up outside of work, even in my own house when I wasn't there. She lied about her whereabouts, said she was working late, but in reality she was with him. I felt my stomach turn, my mind raced. I couldn't believe she'd do this to me. It was like I'd been punched in the gut. I was furious, hurt, and honestly just numb. How could she so easily betray everything we had? All those nights I stayed up worrying, not trusting, and it was all for nothing. I didn't confront her right away. I needed a plan. I started gathering evidence, screenshots, recordings, anything I could use. I didn't want to just yell. No, I wanted her to face what she'd done, see my pain. I was hurt, but I was also starting to think about how I could turn this around, how I could get revenge. I didn't want her walking all over me. She'd always been bitchy, dismissive, and now I saw she'd been lying straight to my face. That stupid, arrogant attitude she had, like she could get away with anything, was the thing that made me so mad. I'd been blind, but now I saw her for what she really was. Cheater, a liar, and someone who never cared about my feelings, and I was done letting her get away with it. After I collected enough evidence, I started planning my move. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew better. I had to be smart about this. I wanted her to see that I wasn't some naive idiot being played. I waited until she was out late again, probably with Mark. Then I set my plan in motion. I knew her habits, her routines, and I had to make it convincing. I installed hidden cameras around the house, just enough to catch her in the act if she slipped up. I also set up a little fake email account, pretending to be someone interested in her, someone from her work circle, I guess. Whatever it took to make her reveal herself. That night I was wired up tight. I kept checking my phone, waiting for her to make her move. And sure enough, she did. I saw her slip out, looking like she was sneaking off to some meeting. I pretended to be calm, but inside I was boiling. I followed her from a distance, keeping my phone recording everything she did. The streetlights, her slow walk to her car, her quick glance around like she was afraid of getting caught. I followed her to some dingy bar where I saw her meet Mark. They kissed in the parking lot. That was the moment I knew I'd had enough. I stayed nearby, watching from a distance. I saw them go inside and I waited. Then I made my move. I parked my truck across the street, grabbed the evidence I'd collected, and called her. I told her I knew everything. Her reaction was priceless. A mix of anger, denial, and that stupid, "I don't know what you're talking about" bullshit she always used. She spun her lies, saying she was just talking to an old friend, that Mark was just a coworker, that it was nothing serious. She looked me right in the eyes and lied. Again. As if I was supposed to believe that crap. That was the moment I snapped. I told her I saw her kiss him, that I had proof, and that I wasn't going to be played anymore. The look on her face was like I'd punched her in the stomach. She tried to deny it. Blame everything on her being stressed, saying I was overreacting, but I wasn't buying it. I was furious, heart racing, hands trembling. I felt betrayed in a way I'd never felt before. All those years, all the promises, the supposed trust gone. I knew I had to hit back, not just for me, but for the respect we once had. I wanted her to understand she couldn't just lie her way out of this. Not anymore. I told her I was done, that I was going to make her regret ever crossing that line. I wasn't sure what I'd do yet, but I knew I had to do something big. I spent the rest of the night staring at the evidence, feeling this weird mix of heartbreak and rage. I kept asking myself how she could be so callous, so dismissive of everything we had. I felt like a fool for trusting her, for thinking she was better than this. But more than anything, I felt betrayed. By her, by the woman I married, by the woman I thought I knew. And that betrayal became my fuel. I knew I had to make her pay somehow. I just didn't know what that was. Yet, the next morning was a blur of anger and clarity. I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind was racing, replaying everything I saw, everything she said last night. I knew I couldn't just confront her and hope she would admit it. No, I needed her to own it, to realize she wasn't getting away with this. I had my evidence, and I was ready to lay it all out. But I also had to be careful. I didn't want her to spin more lies or manipulate the situation. I needed her to face the truth, no matter how much I hated it. I cooked breakfast, acting like everything was normal, but inside I was seething. She was still asleep, probably exhausted from her late-night rendezvous. When she finally got up, I was already sitting at the table, staring at her. She blinked, saw my face, and immediately knew I wasn't in the mood for her usual bullshit. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her I knew everything. Her face twisted. Her bitchy attitude flickered for a second, and then she started lying again. Said she was just talking to Mark. Said they were just friends, that I was making a big deal out of nothing. I cut her off. I told her I had proof, screenshots, the recordings, everything, that I knew she'd been sleeping with him for months. Her face went pale for a moment, then she snapped, "You're overreacting. This is just a stupid misunderstanding. We're fine. You're just being paranoid because you don't trust me." That was her go-to, deny, deny, deny. She's always been good at twisting words, making herself the victim. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I wasn't interested in her excuses. I was done being played. If she wanted to keep lying, I'd got enough to end this whole thing right then and there. Her bitchy attitude turned into outright hostility. She spat back, "You think I'm some kind of slut, please. You're just jealous because I still look good and I can still get men. You're freaking out over nothing." That comment hit me hard. She's always been vain, but hearing her say that, it made me realize how much she didn't care about us, how little she valued what we had. I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak, the kind that makes your stomach churn and your head spin. I told her straight, "I don't care what you think you are. I saw what you did, I caught you in the act, and I'm done with your bullshit." She threw her hands up, acting like she was the victim, like I was the one losing my mind. "You're crazy. You're just projecting your insecurities on me. That's why you're so jealous, so possessive." It was her usual game, blame shift, deflect, lie, but I'd had enough. That moment I knew I had to do something drastic. I told her I was leaving, that I wasn't going to stay with someone who lied and cheated. I wasn't sure how I'd actually go through with it, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. The rest of that day was tense, like walking on eggshells. I packed a bag, not even sure if I was leaving for good or just to get some space. She followed me around the house, acting bitchy, throwing more lies my way, trying to guilt me. But I was numb, just waiting for her to slip up again. I kept thinking about her lies, her sneaking around, how she dared to look me in the eye and deny everything, even when I had proof right in front of her face. I felt like I'd been punched repeatedly, but I also felt this strange sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, lied to, betrayed, used. So I left that afternoon, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I knew I had to get out of the toxic mess she created. I didn't say much when I left, just told her I'd be back later to get my things if she'd let me. Inside, I was shattered, but part of me was also relieved. This whole thing had opened my eyes. I'd been so blind, so trusting, and she'd taken all that for granted. That's when I realized I'd never let someone treat me like that again. I'd protect my heart better, and maybe, just maybe, I'd rebuild from this. Leaving her that day was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I felt like I was walking out of my own life, leaving behind everything I thought was real. But at the same time, I knew I had no choice. She crossed a line that I couldn't ignore anymore, even if part of me still loved her, even if I still questioned whether I was overreacting. The betrayal had cut too deep. I got in my truck, drove away, and for a while I just kept going without really thinking about where I was headed. I needed space, time to breathe, to process all of this. The first couple of days after I left, I felt like I was in shock. I kept replaying the moment I saw her kiss Mark, how her face twisted when I confronted her, and how she kept lying through her teeth. It was like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I'd catch myself checking my phone, expecting her to call or text, but there was nothing. Just silence. I realized I'd been so focused on her and her lies that I hadn't even stopped to think about what I wanted for myself anymore. All I knew was that I was hurt, angry, and incredibly betrayed. I reached out to some friends trying to find clarity. They told me I was right to be angry, that she was a liar and a cheat. Some even told me I deserved better. But inside, I still felt this gnawing sadness, like I'd lost a part of myself. I remember sitting in my apartment, staring at the walls, thinking about all the years we'd spent together. It's funny how love can turn into this crushing weight so quickly. I'd given her everything, my trust, my heart, and she threw it away for some asshole who probably didn't care about her like I did. Eventually, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her ruin me, but I also wasn't going to chase her or beg her to stay. I knew I had to take control of my life again. I started setting boundaries. No more late-night texts, no more hoping she'd come back, no more pretending this was just a rough patch. I needed to focus on myself, rebuild my confidence, and figure out what I wanted next. I knew I couldn't stay in that toxic situation anymore, even if part of me still wondered if I should fight for us. But deep down, I knew the damage was done. That's when I decided to go full revenge mode. Not in a crazy way, more like I wanted her to realize she'd lost someone who genuinely cared about her. I started by digging into her phone, her social media. I found out that she'd been lying about her job, her friends, everything. She was trying to cover her tracks, but I saw through her bullshit. I even hired a private investigator to get a full picture of what she was doing. Turns out, she'd been meeting Mark in secret, not just at those little rendezvous, but actively planning to leave, trying to set up a new life with him. That was the final nail. I wanted her to know I wasn't just some guy who'd get played. I was going to make her regret ever crossing me, without crossing into the crazy revenge zone, but enough to make her feel the loss. I started by leaking her lies to her friends and family, showing everyone the truth about her betrayal. It felt good to finally take control, to flip the script on her. I also made sure she knew I had all the evidence, emails, recordings, photos. I wanted her to see that her lies weren't going to save her. That period of separation was brutal, but it also gave me clarity. I realized I'd been giving her so much of myself and she'd just thrown it all away. But I learned something important. No matter how much you love someone, if they keep lying, cheating, and disrespecting you, you have to walk away. Protect yourself first. I didn't want to become bitter, but I also refused to be a fool. I was hurt, yes, but I was also stronger. I knew I'd survive this mess. And I promised myself that I would come out of it better, more cautious, more aware, and ultimately, more deserving of real respect. After a few weeks of being away, I finally felt like I was beginning to breathe again, even if the ache in my chest was still there. I spent that time rebuilding my life block by block. I got rid of her things, even the little things that reminded me of good times. Photos, gifts, that stupid jewelry she always wore that I used to think looked good on her. It hurt like hell, but I knew it was necessary. I had to cut ties to move forward. I also started focusing more on my ocean project, the thing I loved, the artificial reef deployment. The marine habitat algorithms we developed during those diving expeditions. It was a reminder of who I was before her, and honestly, it helped me regain my sense of purpose. One day, I sat in my living room, finally calm enough to reflect objectively. I realized how much I'd let her manipulate my trust, how blind I'd been to her true nature. I kept asking myself, why did she do it? Why would she risk everything for a fling with Mark? But I knew the answer. She was selfish, entitled, and didn't really care much about me or the life we built. Her lies, her bitchy attitude, her constant dismissiveness, those weren't just flaws, they were her true colors. I'd always been a generous person, trusting and forgiving by nature, but she took that for granted. She thought she could get away with anything, and for a while she did. But I was done playing the victim. I realized I had the power now, power to walk away, to rebuild, and to protect myself from further damage. I cut her loose completely. No more texts, no more calls, no more pretending it was all going to work out. I wanted to be free. Of her lies, her manipulations, her bitchy attitude. I wanted to see what life was like without her dragging me down. I knew that wasn't easy, especially since I still loved her, but I also knew I deserved better. I owed it to myself to start healing, to learn from this disaster. What really shocked me, though, was how much my feelings shifted once I started taking control. The anger turned into a strange kind of clarity, like I'd been blindfolded and now I could finally see. I saw her for what she truly was, a selfish, lying woman who didn't value what we had. Yeah, she did stupid things, cheating, lying, manipulating. But in the end, I realized I was better off without that kind of toxicity. I didn't need her to validate me. I needed to build a life where I was respected, where I could trust myself again. And I promised myself that I would never let someone do this to me again. With that mindset, I started focusing on my passions, my career, and my future. I reconnected with old friends, started going out more, and even got deeper into my ocean restoration work. It's funny, diving, building reefs, and seeing the beauty of the sea reminded me that life is about resilience. Just like those marine habitats I helped deploy, I was rebuilding myself, layer by layer, piece by piece. I didn't know what was next yet, but I knew I was done being her victim. I was ready to reclaim my story, even if parts of it hurt like hell. I learned that betrayal can break you, but it can also make you stronger if you let it. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was starting to heal. Looking back now, I realize this whole ordeal changed me in ways I never expected. At first, I was just angry, hurt, and confused. I felt betrayed to my core, like my trust had been shattered into a million pieces. But over time, I started seeing it differently. This experience, brutal as it was, forced me to reevaluate what I want from life and from the people I let into it. I learned that some people, no matter how much you love them, aren't worth the sacrifice if they don't value you the same way. Trust is a fragile thing, and once broken, it's not easy to repair. But I also learned that healing is possible, even after betrayal that cuts so deep it leaves scars. One of the biggest lessons I took away is that revenge, while tempting in the moment, isn't the real cure. What truly helped me was focusing on myself, my passions, my goals, my mental health. I spent days feeling sorry for myself, then realized that feeling sorry was just giving her power over me. So I took that power back. I immersed myself in my ocean work, got more involved in volunteer projects, and reconnected with friends. Slowly, I started feeling like I was whole again, like I was rebuilding a life that I could be proud of. That's when I knew I was healing. I also see now that the betrayal taught me to be more cautious, more aware. I won't be naive next time. I'll trust again, but with boundaries. I've become more assertive about what I need and what I won't accept. I've learned that love isn't just about trust and passion. It's about respect, honesty, and shared values. If those are missing, everything else falls apart. And I refuse to let anyone take that away from me again. Most importantly, I've come to accept that some chapters end not because of failure, but because they've run their course. Sometimes, walking away is the bravest thing you can do. It's not about giving up. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to be dragged down by someone who doesn't see it. I've found peace in knowing I did everything I could, and I'm proud of myself for making the hard choices. That's a kind of victory, even if it doesn't feel like one at first. So if anyone out there reading this is going through something similar, I want to say, trust yourself, don't be afraid to walk away, and remember that your happiness and dignity matter more than any relationship. No matter how much you loved someone, it's painful, but you will come out stronger on the other side. I did. And I know, without a doubt, I'll never let someone treat me like that again. Life's too short to settle for anything less than respect and honesty.